He's created you from mates from among yourselves. So one of the signs of Allah is He's created us mates from amongst ourselves, and that you may dwell in tranquility with them. Meaning the fabric of society is a good family. We know that when there's a broken family, like I work in the juvenile system, and I even heard Haj Ali, Noman Ali Khan give a lecture on this today. And his last Friday khutbah, I forgot the name, and he said the same thing. He said he knew somebody within, a judge within the juvenile, and I actually did the same thing. And I asked the judge, what do you see? What's the most consistent thing you see in terms of why kids end up as juveniles? And just the same way, I was surprised that the scholar said the same answer. He said it was broken families. He said most of the kids in juvenile courts were there because of broken families. So he says, one of the signs Allah says is making sure that your mates, you have that mutual love amongst you. So you can have tranquility within the family. Because what breaks away the society of the fabric of society is when you have a broken family. And they've even did an 80-year Harvard study, which cost like $20 million. And they said, what is the number one component to success? You realized it was love. And then it says, and He put love and mercy between your hearts. Really, there's a signs for those who reflect. And then in another sign, Allah says, is a sign of the creation of the heavens and the earth. So that's another sign. And within the same ayah of saying a sign, looking at the sun, the moon, and everything in your life, Allah says, and the variations of your languages, meaning we have all different languages from Allah. We all, and some speak English, some speak Arabic, Hebrew, whatever it is, these are signs of Allah. Not one is better than the other. And your colors, meaning Islam doesn't believe in being colorblind, saying that, oh, I don't see any color, I don't see any race but the human race, which I say as well. I used to use that term. Allah wants you to recognize colors and say, this is a sign from Allah. Verily, these are the signs of that you know. So I want to go quickly over a short history of the Prophet, of how he dealt with racism. But before we do that, why don't we begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran? Why don't you go ahead, Brother Ali? And we have also a special guest, Brother Mohammad Jaffer. He's, Assalamu alaikum, brother. He's a person that runs Tawheed Institute in Toronto. He's a public speaker, and he's one of the most truthful people that I know. So hopefully he'll share some of his wisdom as well. So Brother Ali, why don't you begin?
I'd just also like to add that Sheikh Mohammad Jaffer, we're very honored to, I managed to twist his arm and convince him to join in. So we're very honored to have you here, Brother Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining, and looking forward to hearing your beneficial input, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll start from ayah 20 because that talks about man being created from dust, and it completes the ayah until the selection of 2-3 ayahs, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن آياته أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون. ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف اختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم إن في ذلك لآيات للعالمين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد.
Thank you, Brother Ali. So, one of the signs Allah says is that He's created different colors, He's created languages for us to know. And one of the powers of the Prophet ﷺ was when he, right after the treaty, and one of the ambassadors came from the Quraysh. The Quraysh were very tribal. It was all about being the Arabs, about a certain tribe, and if you weren't amongst them, then you weren't amongst them, then they would look down and frown upon you. But when an ambassador came to speak to the Prophet, he noticed a diversity amongst them. And he noticed how loyal they were to the Prophet. To even, if there was even a teardrop or any type of sweat, they would try to gather it from the Prophet. That's how loyal they were. And the ambassador went back to the Quraysh. He advised them not to fight these people. He says, because you're not fighting a tribe, you're fighting something much bigger. And that's the power. So when you fall in love with Allah, you also fall in love with all different colors, black, blacks, the Chinese, any type of race. And you don't even see that. All you see is somebody who's in love with Allah. So that's the reason why we're having this movement, is because hopefully this recent death and so on broke the shackles, and people are now being able to see clearly. And we're no longer been domesticated by the American, propaganda of where happiness is and so on. So before we go any further, I'd love if Brother Mohammad Jaffer could come on and just share a few words about how he views racism and how the Prophet dealt with it, and where should we take it from here, and how we can apply it to our own lives, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's a blessing to be with you all. I don't want to say much because I'm here to learn, I'm here to benefit, and it's a blessing to get that from Hussein, which I know for a while. I know he said that he's the most truthful person he's ever met. I feel sorry for him because he's, oh my God, if I'm the most truthful, you're anyway. So, okay, you wanted me to say something about the way the Prophet dealt with race. I mean, race, the word, or ethnicity is a social construct, so even the word is crazy. But looking at what the Prophet taught, basically the Quran is what he taught, right? And that's where we get our strong source of information. You were saying Surah Hujurat, where it says, O mankind, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakrin wa untha. First, he breaks the whole gender inequality problems. He's created us all, nafsan wahida. So that's our basis, because we're all brothers and sisters in creation. And then he's made us into وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. You were saying that he's made us in tribes and nations, so we should what? لِتَعَارَفُوا. So we should know each other. We should love each other. I mean, and get married and all those beautiful things that happen in humanity that make the world a better place. So I always found that his basis for everything was God's guidance to him, right? And of course, and he always said the most noblest is not a race, it's not gender, it's basically those who have taqwa. Those who have goodness, exactly. And indeed, God is knowing acquaintance. That's how I based it. Now, if I look at the Prophet, everything he did was break all the barriers, everything. First, he caused the human nation to love each other as brothers and sisters. All brothers and sisters. And then he made his wife, who was Khadija, who was the leader of women, and she was a businesswoman, which was unheard of in those days. And his first child who lived, Fatima Zahra, was also a woman, which was looked down upon in those days, to kill women, and especially of other colors. Now, one of the things we as Muslims never hear is what were the races, the colors, the backgrounds, the beauty that made the prophets and the imams. They weren't white, as we would think, aren't they white? No, they had nur, that light within them. But that's the most important part about them. The most important part, what I learned, was being good, being God conscious, loving each other. This is what all the prophets taught. Jesus, Moses, all the way back to Adam. So I always got that from the teachings of the Prophet. Now, he broke it, as I said. He put, for example, people of different backgrounds in power. For example, Salman from Farsi, which is of Iran, was given a position of power. Or Bilal was given a position of power in terms of their military, the army, the leadership. So I always found that beautiful. And then when he would do discussions, you know how you guys do circle discussions? I call this the enlightened circle that you have here with this book club. There's a lot of people don't realize it's a beautiful circle around the world. And what it is no one is better than the other. And this is what the Prophet did. He would sit in a circle with all his companions. And we hear the stories where a rich man sat next to someone poor and then moved away. And it was like discriminated against. And the Prophet says, why did you do that? Like you say, I know you said, Brother Muhammad, you're very true. I think maybe I'm a little candid, right? I sometimes say things I have to be careful of, but the Prophet said to that man, why did you do that? Why did you walk away? And the man says, well, I'll give him half my wealth. I'll give him all my wealth. He says, no, if I'm the guy who was looked down upon because it was color or poverty or whatever, that means if I have all this wealth, I'll be like you. I'll stay the way I am. I don't want to be like that. So he broke that. For example, Jawabir, who was of different color skin, but was one of the most greatest companions of the Prophet in Medina, married the most noble in terms of financial wealth in Medina and broke those barriers. So he constantly broke tribalism and said when the Muslims moved from, for example, from Mecca to Medina, pick a brother. We're all brothers. And all the children of the Prophet, meaning the Ahlul Bayt, they married of different backgrounds, different colors. Because color doesn't matter. It's beautiful in terms of recognizing each other, knowing each other. And the diversity is amazing. And everybody has amazing qualities. But that's not what it's all about. Now, you may say, me, what about me? But you said, okay, this is what the Prophet is. What about me? How does it affect you? Now, I'm a strange character because I was born in Africa. I was born in Tanzania and I left when I was 5. And my companions were the people who worked with us. And I remember them of different colors as my family, like all my older brothers. I didn't have that, I guess, the same color stigma as maybe people get when they get older. As a child, you don't have that problem. I know Hussein, you know this better because you study psychology so much. As children, we don't have this discrimination. But so I left Africa at that age. So when I came to America, when I saw the discrimination in the masjids, for example, one brother would not pray behind another because of the color of his skin. I says, oh my God, where have I entered? I was shocked. So thank God my parents kind of were more open-minded, because maybe having parents who are ignorant, we become the product of that, and we have to break that again. It's a constant cycle of breaking the problems of society. So this is what I got from the Prophet. His kindness, his love for all. It doesn't matter, anybody. And let's not get so proud of ourselves. Okay, if it's a man, a woman, different, yeah, but we have misogyny, we have homophobia, we have racism, we have so many issues in our community. One brother I just heard talk, Sheikh Noor, if you guys heard, we were just listening to him talk just an hour ago, and someone was asking a question, what happens when your kids are called like monkey? I began to cry. I said, what? Is this what we're doing to each other? Or the N-word? I says, oh my God. And then I instead of looking at the other person, I should look at myself, because I know once I was at camp and I was telling, I think Hussein and Brother Hussein, I wish we get some, Asians, maybe some Orientals come to campus. I love diversity. And then the next day, someone came who was of Chinese descent. And I was telling her this, and she says, never say that word Oriental. It's the N-word for us Asians. I'm not a noodle, okay? Just say I'm from South Asia, for example. Don't say that. So we're learning. We make mistakes. I beg for forgiveness. But inshallah, this big impetus that's happening now will change the world. Inshallah, the Imam will be soon with us. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Brother Muhammad. And the signs are all there.
Inshallah.
And I think we first have to destroy racism within our own families, then our communities, then eventually the world. So many people are following the Black Lives Matter, but I say, do you really understand what that means and so on? We always say, what if, we take the example of the Prophet ﷺ, what if
property, and sometimes some people don't pay, and
what if somebody, let's say you're a wealthy family, and let's say a poor person came, would you accept a wedding proposal? And vice versa. What if a What if you're an Arab and there's a black girl that came to the family? And until we defeat that, then we cannot destroy racism at a global level. So inshallah, we're going to go quickly over some slides. And Brother Muhammad, if you could just chime in whenever you can, and Brother Ali and Sister Rihab and anybody else that's on, inshallah. Let me just do a quick screen share. Okay, so a quick review from last week. We talked about trials because we went over Hadith 15. And the intensity of trials is correlated to the intensity of understanding. Most people look at it as when you have a heavy trial in life, you go bankrupt, something happens, that Allah is not pleased with you. It's actually a sign that Allah could be very pleased with you, and there's a trial coming to show you that you can handle the intensity. Then we did do trials make you pray more. One of the reasons why we're tried is if you're not prayerful, one of the ways that you go right to prayer is when there's a trial coming your way. We talked about limitations. You know, there was a science-backed belief that nobody could do a 4-minute mile. As soon as one person did it, then many more were able to do it after. And then we talked about barriers that are broken in the Quran, about how prophets will perform miracles, and how we talk about how Brother Muhammad said, you know, ask, we just showed a video, ask and you shall receive. And the next day an Asian came to the camp. There's no coincidence in Islam. He put the intention out there. He asked Allah, and Allah responded right away. So we may say, oh, that's a miracle, that can't happen. But when we read the Quran, it's filled with that. It's filled with prophets not being burnt by fire, by rivers splitting, so on and so forth. We believe in that. But when something as simple as what Brother Muhammad talks about, we don't believe. So we have to break those barriers. And then we talked about when's the last time you let your body down? When's the last time you ate that cupcake and so on? And then we said, deeper question, when's the last time you let your soul down? When's the last time you missed your prayer? You spoke bad to somebody? You weren't kind? You gave somebody a frowned eye? Whatever the case. And to always reflect on that. And then last week we talked about how whenever you're about to learn something new or learn something at all, always ask the 3 dominant questions. How can I use this? Why must I use this? And when will I use this? Okay. I talked about domestication. You know, when there's an animal, a wild animal, you take it in the house, it's been domesticated. And when Sister Haji Rihab, you have a wolf, right? A dog that looks like a wolf.
I have a Siberian 5 years old husky. She's a rescue. Yeah.
But if it's in the wild, does it act much differently than if it's domesticated in your house?
Yes, it's definitely the way Lassie, I raised her. I'm telling you, like a human child.
Right.
I feed her halal. I cook for her. I'm telling you, she had fasted during month of Ramadan, because she's used to eating like you know how we have our family meals.
Right.
She won't eat without without us being eating. When she saw that we're not eating, she stopped eating. Even she doesn't even have her treat. Subhanallah, the way the house environment, she became part of that. And it's as the saying say, you raise an animal like a human being, it becomes like a human being. And you raise a human being like an animal, it becomes like acting like an animal, where you think.
But I'm talking about what I'm talking actually is about the negative domestication. See, domestication, what you did was in the positive. You treated it like it was supposed to be treated. But sometimes domestication is where you're chained, but there's no chains that you could see. Basically, the blacks have been chained for 450 years. They've been domesticated, as you could say, just like an animal, and they haven't been freed. And now they're asking 3 questions. Why are they rioting? Why are they looting? You know, the blacks are so bad. Well, if you've been oppressed for 450 years, in the last 50 years, you've told, okay, we're going to treat you equally. And as soon as they rise, because look in the 60s. The 60s, there was the Martin Luther King movement. There was a civil rights movement, Malcolm X. Who funded that? It was the blacks. Why? The families were together. They weren't broken. And they were funding the movements. So what did America do in the 70s? It removed all the jobs from the inner cities, destroyed the economy, destroyed families, and induced drugs within and it destroyed it. Now we're asking, why do people loot? Why do people riot? Well, let's ask the question, why are they doing that? Imagine every day you're told, you knock on a door, you sing your way in, you talk your way in. Can we get something to eat? and every day you see all this food, and they're telling you there's no food, or they're telling you no, but you've been knocking for 400 years. They knocked, with the civil rights movement. They knocked with the Black Panthers movement. What do you expect now for them to do? To knock? And the same thing is happening in Palestine. So this is the reason why. We talked a little bit about the Prophet ﷺ, about how he dealt with it, and Brother Muhammad also dealt with that as well. I will skip this. A prayer, we talked about how a prayer can change destiny. Brother Muhammad Jaffer talked about how he just prayed for somebody to come to camp, and it happened. So how does that work? What's the science behind that? We're going to quickly go over that. How do you know if your prayer worked? So basically, most of us will sit, we'll meditate, we'll pray, and we'll ask for something, right? And Brother Muhammad, you could please jump in, or Brother Ali, on this point. And then as soon as you pray, sometimes right away Allah responds. But how do you know if the prayer actually worked? The real prayer. And the example that I'm going to give you is the difference between organic food and junk food. Imagine that you're praying, which is the organic food that you're intaking. But as soon as you leave the prayer mat, you're skeptic, you're negative, you complain, you backbite. So you just fed your soul a bunch of organic food. But then right after you left the prayer mat, what happens? You're feeding that. That means your prayer really hasn't worked. So somebody says, well, how do I know my meditation worked, or so on? Because if you meditate, you pray for 2 minutes and you feel a joy, you feel comfort, if you're able to stay within that state the whole day, and that's how you know it worked. And how would you know? Well, you'll be tested. If somebody cut you off, if somebody backbit you, somebody hurt you, were you still able to stay in that state you were when you were praying? And that's what the Prophet had, that I'm just enamored by, that no matter what happened to him, he was always in that constant state. And I love that.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Again, this is not from the books. I'm just telling you from a personal experience. I have read from some imams, like Muhammad Bakr had said, when you cry, when you do it sincerely, when you pray, when you feel it, it's a personal experience, that warm, fuzzy feeling. I don't know what it's called. It's just this feeling, like when you pray so hard and you cry, and then all of a sudden you feel this peace, this warm, fuzzy feeling. There's something behind that. I know Prophet Nu comes from the word cry as well. Nu means something to cry. There is a secret when you are sincere. Like you said in the Musalla, the prayer mat, you pray, and when you're so sincere, when you put your whole heart into it, you feel it. You feel that God just touched you, your soul.
And actually, Brother Muhammad, they've done studies where your heart emits energy when you're in that state. And what happens is then that's how it talks to the universe, and that's how it responds. And I always tell people, ask Allah to show you a sign. And what will happen, just make an experiment. Allah, I know you're the divine. I know you're the one that's making my heart beat. Show me something that I can feel your presence. And then something unexpected will happen, but we have to ask that sincerely. And then a lot of times we confuse self-love for pleasure. People say, well, what's self-love? Oh, I'm going to go get a manicure, or I'm going to go spend time alone. Whatever it is. Self-love, actually, that's pleasure when you go and do those things. Self-love is actually when you're alone and you're okay with it, within your own thoughts. That's called self-love. Is that when you're allowing your mind to wander, and where it wanders to, it doesn't criticize you, doesn't hurt you, doesn't defame yourself, but you actually learn how to love yourself. Why is it when we use the example of on an x-ray, and you spot on your somebody goes into a doctor's office, and I've always find this intriguing. Here's somebody who's been smoking for 40, 50 years, right? And as soon as he sees an x-ray and the doctor says there's a spot on your lungs, and if you don't stop smoking, that could turn into cancer, and that could kill you. And then, even though they've been doing it for 40 years, instantaneously, they quit the cigarette smoking. Brother Ali, why would you think that'd be the case? Even after 50 years of smoking, where people said this person would never quit, but as soon as they saw an x-ray, they quit. Why would that be the case, Brother Ali?
Sorry, I'm just getting used to, because I used to use Zoom on the laptop,
No problem.
on the phone, and now I'm using it on the laptop. So just getting used to it. I think obviously there's a fear. So there is a fear element. They realized that so many things in their life that they took for granted, their children, their hobbies, their health, all of a sudden, that's like, that could vanish, that could disappear. So I think that fear is what potentially has the biggest impact.
And how about the wanting to change?
Mm.
Because when you wake up to wanting a cigarette. So your brain is a record of the past because you remember all the other times you smoked a cigarette. So what happened to that person? He used his brain as a roadmap to the future, because what were the thoughts that he had that were new? Oh, I want to spend more time with my family. I want to live longer. I have much more to give. I need things to forgive. And that's all that happened. There was a shift, but he had to want to make that change. And what happens is, we've talked a lot about how there's the conscious mind, which is 5%, and the subconscious, which is 95%. And you can't change through the subconscious. You have to learn how to shut that off and become conscious. And that's what happened to that individual. He became conscious of that 5%. And he said, I'm not going to allow my body to overtake my mind. And he learned how to conform the two. So, and there's a famous stating, whatever your mind could conceive and believe, it could achieve. So there's two components to achieving. You have to conceive it, you have to be able to see it, and you also have to believe it. Most of us conceive, we see the Quran, we see it's the word of, that it's the words written from the God, but do we truly believe it where we put our whole life and trust it to that point, where we don't have any fear and we have the art of sabr and patience? But you have to have the two components of not only being able to conceive it, but also being able to believe it.
It's Andrew. Do you care if I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Oh yeah, Andrew, why don't you talk about what just happened to you today? Can you put your video on or just audio?
Yeah, I'll put the video on. We had it off for a minute because we were back and forth with the baby here, so let's see.
And me and Andrew are going to be doing, because Andrew is a recovering addict who's now his whole life has changed, has gone 180 degrees, and we're going to actually be doing a one-on-one talk on how he overcame it and the skills needed to overcome, those dark places in his life. But go ahead, Andrew.
It's really interesting talking about that with someone quitting smoking, that it's like the theoretical, they already knew the risk of the consequences, but once they visibly saw that, they could actually grasp it once it came in. It's really fascinating how, as humans, like, the belief and faith we have in God is something that, typically it's theoretical, but it's like God, I feel like God gives us a lot of really tangible ways to understand him. And it's, for me, it's been an interesting journey, because I've had those moments where it's like, it's so hard sometimes to believe in something that seems so theoretical, but your body and mind almost needs those moments of seeing something happen or tangibly looking. But it's like this, I don't know, it's just this interesting combination of needing those things that adhere to our senses, but also there's has to be such an intention of, I want to believe in this, I'm going to make a choice to have faith in this, even when you don't see that all the time. It's like this constant, you have to, those moments that the senses take in something gives you momentum to keep in the in-betweens, to believe and have faith and know. Does that make sense?
Yes. And basically, it's your heart, where your mind and your body are asking, but then the heart goes in and feels that joy, and then something unexpected happens. And that's where God speaks to you. That's what I said, ask. Ask God for something to give you something unexpected, a sign from him, and then just get out of the way. And even in your lowest moments, every individual had those, where somebody came out of nowhere and helped you. You could be a flat tire, it could be anything, but everybody has been in those situations. And that's God. That's God coming to our rescue. But you have to experience that. Sometimes just asking for that as well. We have so many stories that we could share about that. The chapter 6 talked about the 7 lies of learning. What are the most limiting myths you tell yourself? How can you overcome the debilitating effects of these myths? And how can you turn these limiting beliefs into positive ones? We lie to ourselves all the time. So one of the lies that we tell ourselves is intelligence is fixed. You know, we all follow this IQ test. The IQ test is actually a failing test. It really doesn't work because it doesn't measure. Even the person who created the IQ test saying the purpose that it's used for is not what I intended it for. Because there's two things the IQ test doesn't measure: creativity and practical intelligence. And those are the two things that you need for success. I also talked about how intelligence is fixed, how you make it into a growth mindset versus a fixed. It says, most of us would say, if you say you're not good at something, you'll say, I'm not good at reading. That's the fixed mindset. So instead, what should you say? Haji Rihab, what's one thing you should say? Or Sister Haja?
I'm not good at reading yet.
I'm not good at reading yet. So whenever you're not good at something, you use the word yet at the end. I'm horrible at Quran. I can't read Quran. I can't read Quran yet. And it just changes your whole brain, meaning eventually it's going to happen versus it's never going to happen.
Always speak positive.
Go ahead.
I said always speak positive.
Yes, it's a positive mindset. It says that fixed mindset students believe their basic abilities, their intelligence, their talents are just fixed. They have a certain amount of that, that's that. And their goals become to look smart all the time and never look dumb. In a growth mindset, students understand that their talents and abilities can be developed through effort, good teaching, and persistence. They don't necessarily think everyone's the same or anyone can be Einstein, but they believe everyone can get smarter if they work at it. So basically, you could work at it. Here's the truth. It's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. There are multiple types of intelligence. More on this later. Like so many things, intelligence, combination of attitude, actions, and dependent. Intelligence is fluid. Line number 2, we only use 10% of our brain. I used to believe this because I used to always hear this in movies and so on. And it's not true. An example we could give is, do we use 10% of our bodies? No, we use 100%, but it's how we use our bodies, correct? So we could use our bodies either to sit around all day and be lazy, or we could use our body for other things. Our brain is also the same way. So the new beliefs, I'm learning to use my whole brain in the best way possible. Line number 3, mistakes are failures. They gave the example of Einstein, how Einstein used to make even simple math mistakes in his really complicated theories and algorithms. Michael Jordan failed a lot. He missed 26 game-winning shots and lost. A person who's never made a mistake has never
Learned.
A person who's never made a mistake has never
Existed?
Nope.
I said learned.
Murtada, you want to take a guess? A person who's never made a mistake has never
Learned.
Tried.
tried anything.
Oh.
A
Tried anything
person
new?
who's never made a mistake has never tried anything new. You know, we're so scared to try new things because we're scared to make a mistake, because we're in the gratification era of everything is on Instagram and social media, and we're scared to look bad. And because of that, we're scared to try new things. So what are mistakes? Mistakes are a sign that you tried something new. That's it. That's all a mistake is. Why do we fear mistakes? Because of the way we'll be criticized and so on. So what we do is we tell our students at WISE, tell them, go ask your parents your famous failures. When did they have to fail in order to succeed? MashaAllah, and the stories that they would come back. My mom was in Syria. She had to fail this exam 7 times. And she kept taking it in order to get out of Syria. And this is why our family is in Michigan now, because she was finally able to overcome it and so on. And everybody had a story. And I said, is it okay to fail? Absolutely. New belief. There's no such thing as failure. The only failure to learn. There's no such thing as failure, only failure to learn. Meaning if you don't learn or try, that's the failure. Knowledge is power. We always hear that knowledge is power. Knowledge is not power. I've been some teachers that had a lot of knowledge, but weren't very powerful because they had no idea how to use the knowledge. Sometimes you see scholars or speakers or whatever, they have a lot of knowledge, but as soon as you see them in the real world, you don't see it translate because of the action. So knowledge times action equals power. Lie number 5, learning new things is very difficult. You know, we're all been taught this myth that if it's something new, it's very difficult. It should be uncomfortable when you learn something new. It should be uncomfortable, but it shouldn't be difficult. And the one who won telomeres at the end, and what it is the telomeres will measure the age. And they've done studies that if you meditate and you're more prayerful, your telomeres extend and you can live longer. So she won a Nobel Peace Prize for this, but she was a person who couldn't read because she had dyslexia. And the methods of the way she was learning just weren't working no matter how hard she was trying. And so the example that the book gives is the stone cutter. What happens is a stone cutter will keep cutting and eventually the stone will break. But it wasn't the last attempt, it was a multiple of a bunch of attempts. So the example from the excerpt of the book, approach your learning like a stone cutter. It will require you to cultivate patience, have a positive attitude, and be adaptive. If you're the kind of learner who does best with a book in your hands, that's fantastic. Some people could read with a book in their hands. Some people can't read with a book or learn with a book in their hands. There are different ways. But if you already know that it doesn't work for you, why keep trying the same thing? Look for other ways to learn that do work for you. Lie number 6, the criticism of other people's matters. Man, this was a big thing for me to overcome. And Brother Muhammad, if you could also probably chime in on this, because I remember there would be times where I would give a speech or something would happen, and then at the end, everybody would say, MashaAllah, good speech, and then one person would be critical and it would just wreck my day. And then I heard this line saying, don't ever take criticism from somebody that you would never take advice from. And that just changed my whole paradigm of the way I would look at things in criticism and so on, because I used to be very sensitive. And the book talked about the Wright brothers, how they took so much criticism because scientists told them nobody could ever fly a plane. It's impossible to put an aircraft in the air. And they actually did it, but people were scared to write about it because they were scared to be criticized, saying that it's impossible. How did you write such a thing? It's a lie. And it took a while for them to prove that they were able to fly. So Brother Muhammad, why don't you talk about the way to deal with criticism from other people? Because we're very critical. Everybody's looking to bring everybody down to elevate themselves.
Sure, and I think I may be the expert because I get criticized a lot. I know I'm learning, so I'm listening to you, and I know what you feel, because if I've ever been criticized, it hurts, because you're trying your best to do your best, and there's always someone who just wants to jab you, even though there's nothing to criticize. They'll find the fault, and at the same time, I look at it and says, okay, maybe. I know your approach is much more positive, but I try to look at myself and say, you know what, I'm going to take that criticism and try to learn from it. Or if they're saying something, for example, I'm saying something wrong, I'm going to do my homework, I'm going to do my research. I'm using my personal, I don't have the knowledge and expertise that you have to make it right, but I try to take it as a positive. This is, maybe that guy's right. Let me fix this problem. Oh, you're arrogant. Okay, let me try to fix this problem. I try that, so it doesn't mean I'm right. And it does hurt. And it hurts so much that it actually pains your body sometimes. Right. Like I've had my eye flicker when someone's criticizing, for example. I said, wow, why did that happen to me? But it happened. We do feel when people try to hurt us, and sometimes in a malicious way, not necessarily in a positive way. They try just to bash. And this happens to us as children all the way up. Right. I try to say, you know what, let me take it as a positive. And that's
it's difficult because sometimes when you're close to somebody and you have an ambivalent friend who waits for that opportunity, and then they're really kind to you, then out of nowhere, they'll hit or say something, and you'll be like, man, that was hurtful. And I think that's when the criticism really hurts, when you didn't see it coming and they hit a soft spot. And if we have friends like that, then we really have to question, should these types of people be in your life? True. The only time I really like naysayers versus critical people is to jump ideas off of them, because they'll look for the holes. Other than that, we have to be careful.
He does that with me all the time. Yeah, you're right.
Alhamdulillah. We'll finish the slides really quick. Go ahead. Somebody wanted to chime in?
Yeah, what I'm saying is not all criticism comes in from like pure hearts. Many of them comes in from being envious, trying to put others down to for their own gain.
I like the rule, Haji Rihab. If you take advice from the person, then take the criticism. But if somebody who's very critical that you won't take advice from, then don't take the criticism. I like that rule. That's a rule that I follow. Let's go to lie. Approach. Okay. I think we went over. Approach the learner like a stone cutter. If it requires you to cultivate patience, to have a positive attitude, and to be adaptive to your own needs, if you're the kind of learner who does best of, okay, we spoke about this. Lie number 7, we believe, this is the last lie, genius is born. We believe that geniuses are born. That's a lie. Geniuses leaves clue. There's always a method behind what looks like magic. The Prophet ﷺ was a genius because he did something that seemed impossible, possible, and he made it seem almost easy. And that's genius. Genius to me is when something is so complicated, makes it so simple. Like Imam Khomeini was a genius because he can make some of the most complicated things simple. Genius is not born, new belief, genius is not born. It's made through deep practice. If you admire somebody, go study what they did and try to apply it and see what the clues they left. And you could also become your own genius. I believe we're all geniuses in our own ways. So the end of the book, it says, end of chapter 6, take a good look at some of the mistakes you made. Have you let these define you? How have your feelings about these mistakes changed after reading this chapter? Andrew, you want to chime in terms of how you've allowed mistakes maybe at one time define you and how you look at them now, if you're still in?
Yeah, hold on one second. I'll get back on screen here. You get to get in on our family.
You have a beautiful family.
How we're doing it today, but I guess coming out of all the mistakes, really, really bad mistakes I made that had really serious consequences. When I started moving forward from that, I had to really change my perspective to let every mistake be a learning opportunity. Even mistakes I had already made that I had paid for, I had to look back at and just ponder, what can I learn from those so I don't make the same mistakes again, especially for someone coming out of any sort of addiction. You have to take it really seriously. But then just in a little way, I try to keep the attitude at work, any mistake you make is a learning opportunity. I mean, I've brought our system down at work. Within the first 2 weeks at my new job last year, I brought our systems down where 5 plants couldn't generate their reports, and it was a learning opportunity. And anything you do like that, no matter how you feel, if you look at it from that perspective, you really have an opportunity. And you'd be surprised how many people buy into that with you, that mindset. And if you have that attitude, then others really, really will encourage you to grow as an individual rather than criticize you a lot more. I've experienced.
And me as well. I mean, of all the thousands of counseling sessions, dealing with addicts, dealing with people from cancer to all types of issues, I've said everything under the sun of I've said everything wrong in the last 12 years, but I've learned what not to say. And I've learned from those mistakes and I've tried to grow from it. And I think that's the growth mindset. Most of us, when we fail 1 or 2 times, we quit. Why? Because usually it stems in terms of selfishness. Because when we look at something that's bigger than ourselves and we quit, it's because we're selfish and self-centered and it's all about us. We don't want to feel bad. And the only way to grow and to become successful is when you could overcome that hurdle. So thank you for sharing that. Let me just go back to the screen share really quick. I lost the... there's just a few slides left and we'll ask questions and we'll go from there. The hardest part of all of this. What is the hardest part of all of this? We've talked about doing things. Brother Muhammad talked about overcoming, racism, praying, having your heart palpitate where it feels the presence of Allah, where people do crack, do drugs, drink alcohol for that high. where Allah says there's a way you could get it where it doesn't hurt you. But what is the hardest part of all of that? It's making the time to do it. And I think that's the key. If it's people that want to meditate, making the time to meditate in the morning. People who want to reflect at the end of the day, making the time to reflect on their day. To do your 5 daily prayers, making the time. To reading your Holy Scripture, making the time. And I think that's the hardest part. Where does Shaitan, Iblis get you? Is we don't make the time and we come up with excuses tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And so on. So Brother Muhammad, before we end, why don't you chime in about just doing the work where you've prayed, where you've told me so many stories from your times where you worked at Chase to your, and so on, where you've asked Allah for something, for help, and just taking the time and asking, what is that? Why does it seem so hard for people to make the time?
You ask tough questions. All right, so life to me is that I don't know if I'll be alive in a minute. I don't know. So the way I look at it, in all my life, I've always said this is, don't procrastinate, don't wait, just do it. I know it's a Nike ad, but that's not what I'm talking about. I just have this gift that I say to myself, why wait? Why be stupid? Just do it. And sometimes it gets you in trouble. Like, we've done the camp when we didn't have the money, or we've done Enlight, or we've done Wise, and we don't have the money, we have to borrow. But those things are all, I think God pushes. I say, and I've told you the story, I think Brother Hussein has done this to you too. When a child falls in a well, and everybody's saying, oh my God, that kid is drowning. Everybody's, oh my God. And all of a sudden someone jumps in, grabs the kid, takes him out. He says, Alhamdulillah, brother, you did it. I didn't do it. Who pushed me? Somebody pushed me, right? And I think
Right.
that's what we have. God is pushing us, but he's helping, he's carrying us, right? I know the biblical saying, the footprints, that God, you were walking with me, there's 2 pairs of footprints, but after a while, I only saw 1 pair. Where were you? And God is, I was carrying you. I was
Right.
carrying you. You didn't see me. And I feel that. And sometimes I do that. Yeah, I want to say something about racism. Maybe I shouldn't say this because it is in an old corporation that they shouldn't have done this, but it happens to all of us since the topic started with racism. And then let's do something about it. Because if we say nothing, like if we were in front of George Floyd and we just saw that and did nothing,
Right.
we are part of the problem. Unfortunately, we are. So I've experienced that once, a few times at work, where people were being given the knee on their neck. And I just spoke to one of the guys. I was on a Brazil team, and this guy is white on the Brazil team, and he was discriminated. So whites get discriminated too. And I wasn't a Brazilian, so I wasn't being discriminated, but at least I had my fight a little bit stronger than him. And I just couldn't take it anymore. And why I got that is because the love I've had of the Prophet Ahlul Bayt. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam stood up, and he had a small number, or when Imam Hassan was all by himself and he stood up, it just drives you. So I stood up and I said to the manager, hey, stick up for the guy. You're the manager. You should be watching his back. And everybody stood up and clapped their hands. And I said, oh my God, my career is over now. But it's okay. It's worth it because you're stopping oppression of any kind. So we all go through that. It happened to me too. And I stood up, and Allah gives you that blessing to go do it. Will you take that rahmah and go with it?
Right.
Or will you take a step back and say, let me go get some drink and get out of here, take a smoke, or something bad that's not good for you. So I thank God that he's pushed me. I think I have guys like you who push me in the well. I wasn't going to come and you push me in Ali Saidi, but at the same time, when I'm falling, I'm grabbing your hand and we hold each other because you can't do this by yourself. You have to hold on to the rope of God together. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. And I think for me, there was a moment in my life where I was 13 or 14, and I there was a person who called at the gas station, and he was playing these numbers, and he won. So when he went to go and collect, he goes, did you play my numbers? I told you over the phone. The guy says, no, I forgot to play them. But I saw with my own eyes that he did play them. And I remember I said nothing because I was scared. I was in fear. And it was about $15,000 or $20,000 that the guy stole. The clerk at the gas station stole from the person who actually won the lottery that would play every day. And I said, for the rest of my life, I'm never, ever going to feel that guilt again. but I'll never forget that. So sometimes when we don't do the work and speak up for others or do other things, remember there's going to be regret that follows that. And in the book Limitless, it talks about how when we don't take chances, do what we want, and we're 70, 80, we're going to regret so many of these things because we didn't take the risks and chances because of our limiting beliefs and so on. Let's just finish a few of the slides left. I think that was it. This we'll talk about next week. So is there anybody else, please, that would like to add a comment, anything about in terms of famous failures, anything about things that they've overcome? Hajri Hab, if you would like to add anything.
Yeah, you know what, as I've stated, subhanAllah, the climate of Ahl al-Bayt, alayhim as-salam, it's a lesson for humanity to take, and for them to look at and ponder on and to overcome whatever obstacles they are facing. I've tasted it. And then more you pray, subhanAllah, about wisdom, about knowledge, and about, give you the patience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with his mighty mercies, he'll give you more what you're asking, in a way, not giving you what you think or others that, oh, I got it. No, he'll give you more than that. He'll give you more struggles. The struggles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that you're gonna get stronger and you're gonna get wiser. And then that the knowledge and the wisdom that you've gained from that has a lot of scars. The scars that a person, you would learn to be appreciative of each scars you went through, because each scars that you have, it's a lesson learned where you had accomplished the unthinkable. What would you imagine about, like, this is the laws and the Armor Foundation and the National Guard, and it had helped so many children. The murder of and the cries of so many African Americans, it's been happening throughout worldwide. I've looked at, again, subhanAllah, if every climate is, I look at it as of my children. Many people, they assume or they think because of it's been like alive. As of Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, it happened. So, but because of the daily struggles that we go through, and you don't leave a stone unturned, because what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you, no man shall take from you. And the only way you could do that, you have to stand and fight and believe. And with patience, you can overcome the impossible. And subhanahu wa ta'ala, and things that you would feel, like Hajj Muhammad says, that feeling in your heart, subhanAllah, Allah gives you that. Allah gives you the assurance in a way of telling you, giving you the boost, the energy to tell you, you're on it, keep going. Keep going. Don't look back. If you want to look back and use what you've learned into something better. And then, alhamdulillah, it's
see, when somebody like Hajri Hab talks about having patience and having trust in Allah after having 3 of her kids being kidnapped, think about that. So what's our excuse? If somebody were to even touch my kids, I don't know how I would be able to breathe the next day. Imagine if your kids were kidnapped, taken illegally, separated, and then you'd be able to talk in the trust of Allah. Imagine the intensity of that trial. But I think it's having that growth mindset, that just complete trust in Allah, that you could overcome anything. And I truly believe doing the work is where you close your eyes, you tie an emotion of joy and happiness, and you give it that intention of how it's going to feel and how it's going to look, and you say, okay, this is how I'm going to be today. And you tie an emotion to it of gratefulness. You ask Allah for something that you want really bad, and you don't move until your body is convinced of it. And that's the secret. That's the secret that the monks had, the Buddhists had 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. That's the secret the Prophet ﷺ has taught us. That's the secret now that the scientists have finally caught up, that your body doesn't know the difference between a thought and reality. And if your body is convinced that it's really happening, then it will manifest. And that's doing the work. That's that conversation with Allah. Hajri Hab said, nothing is going to stop me. I'm going to bring justice. She tied an emotion through of how it's going to feel when justice comes. And then that's the secret. You know, they always hear this, catch the secret. Well, that's the secret. And science has finally caught up to what the Prophet has taught us 1400 years ago. But as Brother Muhammad Jaffer was talking about having that trust, the analogy I always use is, imagine a person's on a tree and he asks Allah for help. And you scream, is there anybody up there? And Allah says, I'm up here, I'll help you. Because Allah talks to us in all different types of ways. Then Allah tells you to let go of the tree. But what do? We look back up there. Is there anybody else up there to help us? We don't want to do it Allah's way. We either want to do it our own way or allow our low desires to take over. And that's why we've been domesticated, as lack of a better term, saying this is the way we should live within our low desires to achieve happiness. And thus, when you do that and you oppress people by fooling them, like they had done with the blacks, this is the result. And the blacks are always being told, well, by the time your kids are older, this will be gone. Well, they've been told that lie for 100 years. That lie, isn't true as well. The change has to happen now. But I really believe it has to happen within ourselves. And then the power of prayer really works. But if you can't change yourself, how do you believe you're going to change others? So if you still feel that there's racism within your heart when you see a black person or you see somebody, we talk so bad about Jews. There's thousands of Jews right now protesting in Israel, telling them to stop taking Palestinians' land. So just like the whites are trying to say that all blacks are bad, we shouldn't fall into that same hole by saying all Jews are bad. We need to be very careful of that statement. Brother Muhammad, why don't you end this with just one comment and then we'll end, inshallah. And if there's any questions anybody would like to ask, text, please do it now. That's one parting words you got to leave us with, please.
Oh, man, you always ask me the tough ones. I don't know what to say. I was going to say, I want to just thank you all, bless you all for this global circle of wisdom. I mean, I know it's the first time I joined you in this book club. Sorry, it's my fault. Because I've gone to in Dearborn and I didn't get the chance. But I can see that you guys all together are trying to make the world a better place. And it starts with ourselves. And I'm just being here with you and I see it. Feel it. And I want to just pray for each other that we could all make a dent, as I think Steve Jobs says, make a dent in the world. If we don't try, then what's the use of living, in my opinion, right? I think we have to try. And I think you were saying if we just do it, we can make things happen with the mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes. And so I just want to thank you all for allowing me to join you guys today.
Thank you, Brother Muhammad. And Brother Ali, would you like to end with anything?
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
Where do you guys get haircuts? Because we still can't get haircuts.
Well, the hair salons in Dearborn never closed. They just did it secretly.
The women are lucky here, but the guys can't get haircuts.
Alhamdulillah. Brother Ali, why don't you add on and we'll end, inshallah.
I think when you got such a high caliber of people, Sister Rahab, yourself, Brother Muhammad, there's not much I can add. It's just an honor to be with you, and even Brother Andrew, it's great to hear stories. I can add to that, stress of work. I used to smoke, and so many people like, oh, you can't give up, you can't give up, you can't do this. And Alhamdulillah, I read the Alan Carr book, and now when I talk about smoking, I say, it's almost like an idol. It's a form of shirk. It's something that you don't need, and you've become a slave to the nicotine. So I think there was a comment as well in the chat where someone said it's tied to an emotion. When you asked me the previous question, and I said it was fear, they said, I think Sister Batul has said it's tied to an emotion. That's why they quit smoking.
Yes.
So yeah, and I think that's what it's all about. Since I first came to this book club and you introduced me to, Wim Hof and Joe Dispenza, I think feeling that emotion of where you want to be, manifesting it obviously with the permission of Allah is vital. Just doing that regular visualization I think, you know, Sister Rahab, where would you have been if you didn't have a concept of where you were in 2 months, 3 months, you know, many kind of goals. So as you say, keeping a notebook, just writing down, you know, one line of how you've improved yourself. We know some of the great scholars have recommended that in all disciplines. Now in the West, they recommend writing your goals. I think you can add to that, Brother Hussein.
Yes. I've been dealing with an addict he's been an addict for about 7 years. He's robbed from his family and everything. And he's been clean now for about 3 months. And all I had him do is just wake up in the morning. He promised me that he would, and he's been doing it every morning. And he would wake up and he would tell his body and how it's going to feel to be clean today. And what are the emotions he's going to feel today and how he's going to overcome that. He did that every day. Now he's to a point where he doesn't even think about the addiction. He's now using his brain to create other scenarios in his life. And he's realizing, because some of the best people to work with are people who have hit rock bottom, because all those beliefs are gone because they realize none of them worked. And this person, alhamdulillah, has been clean now for 3 months. And as long as he keeps doing the work, more things will happen. That's why I implore all of you, wake up in the morning at Fajr, pray to Allah, be grateful. Don't move until you feel that you are that person that you want to become, and tell your body you're convinced. Because if addicts are willing to do it and their lives change, then why do we have to go and hit rock bottom in order to do this? Yes, we could change in pain and suffering, but why not do it in joy and happiness? And that's my pause. Why wait? You know, Joe Dispenza talks about this. The Prophet ﷺ would always talk about this as well. And let's not wait for something bad to happen to change. Let's become that change.
Yeah, I'd like to add just on prayer, you know, sometimes we always want to make sure that the prayer comes out the right way, or we try to psych ourselves up for the dua. We say, oh, we've got to do. Allah knows your innermost thoughts.
Right.
A thought, a feeling, an emotion is a form of prayer. You could just think something, you know, and we talk about this manifesting. You think something in your heart and you feel it. You didn't even say it and it happens.
Yes.
You know, how many, you know.
I asked I listened to a scholar, I said, just ask Allah for a sign. So I went to sleep, this was about 3-4 nights ago. And I said, Allah, show me a sign in my dream that right when I wake up, it's clear to me. So I have this dream about David Turfy. He's a judge in Dearborn Heights. He's my first cousin. And then I said, that was weird. That was a weird dream. And I wake up, and who's the first person that texted me? Was David. He's telling me that you guys got to cut the grass at Wise. It's too long. I just got a complaint. And I said, that's all I needed to see. I said, I hear I dream about somebody. And then the first person that texted me of it could have been anybody was him. And there's no coincidence. And that's why I tell people, do the work so you can have things like this happen to you. And I could write a book on it. So could Brother Mohammad Jaffer. So could everybody else on this panel. So thank everybody for coming in. Let's continue to encourage each other, and let's continue doing the work. Next week, we'll go a little bit deeper into it. Inshallah, Brother Muhammad and everybody else could join in. If you have any questions or anything at all, you could message me and so on. We could talk further, inshallah. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you, Haj.
Thank you.
Thank you. Salam alaikum.
Alaikum.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
See you, Andrew.